promoting agriculture. We always talk about it, but we're really not that good at it. We're going to dig into it in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I've got a good one for you today because I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out on the table. In general, we suck at marketing and promotion. We are not good at it. But I've got an expert on here who's going to tell us how we can improve. In fact, she runs an agency that's all they do is work with agricultural entities promoting and marketing and branding. I'm just going to throw it out there again. We suck at it because you know what? We are like factories. We love to make stuff. We love to produce stuff. Bushels, gallons, pounds. It's all we focus on. Production, production, production. If we were half as good at promoting as we are at producing, by God, maybe we'd have something. But in general, we're not. And I'm talking about the entire industry. I'm going to point fingers, but we're going to get into that later. Her name is Maureen Ballatori. She's a sharp lady. She's in upstate New York. She has an agency called Agency 29. The bulk of her business is in agriculture, doing branding, promotion, etc. Maureen, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Very excited to jump into this conversation.
All right. Now, here's the thing. Before we hit the record button, you and I both have a couple things in common. You're from a dairy background. So am I. We both know how to work. And the thing is, this is what agriculture people like to do. Work, produce, make gallons, fill the bulk tank, fill the bin. We're good at it. We're so good at it. In fact, we're oversupplied on almost every single commodity. Even now, organic and niche products we're oversupplied on because we focus like hell on production. Then comes the promotion side of it. And you even grudgingly admitted you don't want to bash anybody. You said, yeah, Damian, we are kind of bad at promotion. And that's why I've got this agency. So take me there. And by the way, we're not being mean. We're being honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think the part of the challenge is that some of it's chicken and egg, right? As you were just chatting, I just wrote that down, that it is a balance of what is being produced and what is able to be sold. And because of the unpredictability sometimes of what's going to be available, I think that's one of the challenges in terms of selling through the exact output of a product in a season, right? I was just chatting with the leading apple breeder in the United States yesterday, actually, Dr. Susan Brown at Cornell. And we were talking about that,
Cornell, is that an ag school? Do they know anything about ag over there at Cornell?
One or two, I'd say. Yeah. And so, and actually this is well-timed, this discussion, because I spent 10 hours Monday and 8 hours Tuesday in a meeting with the New York State Dairy Promotion Order, talking about the promotion of dairy for the state of New York. And so I think the challenge there is that they have to fund things that they think are going to be a good fit and not necessarily a sure win, right? But they're looking for things that are going to absolutely amplify the industry. And this is not just in dairy, it's in all industries. But those organizations are looking to push the entire category as a whole. And sometimes it's hard to take a risk on a new and different idea that isn't that sure win. So there's another thing that I think New York State in particular does really well. There's a Grow New York competition. And so that is $3 million a year awarded to food and ag tech innovation companies from around the world. And, it's funded by primarily Empire State Development, economic development associations throughout the state of New York. Now, they're well suited to amplify an industry like that because of where the money comes from. But I think that one of the challenges with promoting the industry as a whole, and that whole chicken and egg, is with checkoff dollars or, organizations that are intended to promote the industry across the board, there's only so much they can do related to thinking outside the box. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it's hard for the industry to take a risk.
I'm going to throw out a bazillion different things here. And I got to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I dislike most humans. I'm very much misanthropic. But I've gotten to where and in our brief little stint here, I've gotten to where I don't hate you as much as I hate most people. In fact, I might like you, Maureen. All right, let's be straight here. All right, we focus on production. You and I both admit that. There's another thing that I think is a reality. We created these things. I think there's 43 checkoff programs at a national, federal level. I might be wrong by a couple, but the point is everything from blueberries to watermelon to the biggies. Beef and I have been critical of two of the largest, beef and dairy. Dairy has this massive amount of budget. You and I are both dairy farm kids. They grab 15 cents per hundredweight of every hundredweight sold off of every dairy farm. Unless you somehow are bottling it and selling it to your neighbor, you're going to pay 15 cents per hundredweight. And it becomes this massive amount of money. And they suck at it. The last good thing that came out of the dairy promotion was Got Milk. That was not even created at the federal level. It was created by an ad agency in California in, my God, the 1990s, I think it was. It's been around for almost 30 years. They've stuck with it. And I have pointed out that, okay, that's the last clever thing you came up with. And that was almost 30 years ago. And it wasn't even you that came up with it. There are 9 layers in these checkoff programs that are so well funded. Dairy as an example, and we're going to get to all of them. But the point is, dairy as an example, they've got massive amounts, literally hundreds of millions of dollars that pour into this, and then they funnel it back to some of the states or the regions or what have you. But they haven't come up with a clever thing in almost 3 decades. They've stuck with milk mustaches for 22 years. I pointed out before, Maureen, and you're the advertising specialist, not me, but years ago, an advertising association awarded Like a Rock. That if you can go back in time, some of us are old enough to remember, and we all drive trucks and ag. Bob Seger's amazing voice that is so distinctive and recognizable. Like a rock.
Oh, totally. I knew when you said it, I could hear it. Yeah.
They showed that truck bouncing across a pasture out in sand hills, let's say. And then they showed that truck at a construction site. And it like a rock. And it touched you. It made you want to go and buy a Chevy pickup truck. That was, at the time, and I know you're a little younger than me, at the time, that was hailed as one of the best advertising campaigns in history. Chevy stuck with it for 7 years. Are you telling me that milk mustaches are 3.5 times better than Like a Rock, for God's sakes? Well, they stuck with milk mustaches for 22 years. So my point is, we're not good at generating new advertising and promotional vehicles, and it's not because of a lack of funding, shall I say?
Right. So certainly a lot has changed since Got Milk, and I will absolutely agree with you that was a very compelling campaign. It was incredibly well done. It has stood the test of time. I actually also think that if there was a resurgence of the Got Milk campaign, it would probably still resonate. If the national industry brought that back, right? Because it's got nostalgia at this point, right?
Yeah.
I think
and you see that happen, where all of a sudden, again, if Chevy brought back Like a Rock, I think it would probably be pretty darn well received.
Yeah.
But they've not abandoned it, nor have they refurbished it.
So much has changed though, right? Think about how much more information we have about today's consumer and the generational buying differences from one generation to another. When the Got Milk campaign was launched and Like a Rock and, other campaigns from the 80s and 90s or even, prior to that, there was really one consumer you were talking to, and it was mom who's shopping for the family in the grocery store.
Yep.
Whereas now we have so much more information about the intricacies of the various consumer, their preferences, and there are more preferences than there ever have been, right? There are more choices in today's grocery store. Even when you think about the dairy aisle, Agency 29 works with a plant-based beverage we're not supposed to say it's the plant-based milk, right? You can legally, but then the dairy folks get all angry about that, that the plant-based folks want to be in the dairy aisle, and the dairy industry is really holding on tight to those placements as they should, right?
Yep.
But what has changed so much since Got Milk's reign is that we now have a greater understanding of that buyer, of, the mom who's doing the grocery shopping, who is not necessarily the only one in the grocery store anymore, right? There's so many intricacies of that. And the industry is also, we're talking a lot about dairy, but this extends to, we're talking about really, this applies to all agricultural products. We have a greater understanding of what Gen Z is looking for.
Yeah.
What are their values and what's compelling them with their choices? And so really what I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially as it relates to regenerative agriculture, and the trend that's coming down the pike there with regenerative ag and sustainability and climate, is the amount of, when you really think about the amount of money that goes into every single product that is on shelf at the grocery store.
Yep.
And how influenced we are, not only by what is there, but where is it? How is it merchandised? Where is it in the store? If I go into the produce aisle, is it the first thing I see? Is it in the middle? Is it in the aisles? Is it cross merchandised with a hummus?
Yep.
Things like that. So it's bigger business now, I think.
Well, it's always been big business. I mean, let's face it. There's been the Procter & Gamble's or the General Mills of the world for a long time. But you do have your point that I think a lot of folks are missing. In fact, we in ag are missing it. You just said we know so much more about the consumer.
Exactly.
You used to have 3 channels,
right.
And then it became 27 channels or whatever by the 80s when cable became prolific. Not for people like us who lived in the country. We still had 3 channels, but the point is maybe four channels. But you had your vehicle of marketing was billboard, print.
It's so much more limited.
It was print.
It
was print,
omni-channel
largely
now.
print, outdoor, radio, television, right?
Right.
And now, I mean, I grab my cell phone because somebody texts me, and hell, there's a good chance that if I just push it once, something will come up that has an ad attached to it. I have advertisers on this podcast, for God's sakes.
Right.
Speaking of which, I better just go ahead and talk about that. If you're a Midwest corn, soybean, or wheat grower, I want you to think about the evolution of your agronomic strategy and how Redox Bionutrients can help you. Redox Bionutrients is a new way of thinking. We're talking about a biostimulants company that is the new way of growing crops. You can't just keep dumping on more fertility. You can't just keep dumping on more chemistry. It's a new way of thinking because we've got the environmental stuff, we've got the economic reality. So how can you get more with less? What if you could use ultra-efficient plant nutrition and superior biostimulants? Redox helps you do that. Redox is a family-owned and operated business out of Burley, Idaho. Started off in specialty crop and then went into turf, and now is covering more and more broadacre agriculture. If you're in the Midwest, you really should check them out. You can go to redoxgrows.com/Midwest to see what they can do for you. They use products like Mainstay SI and Banks with breakthrough nitrogen optimization through the RDXN technology. Go to redoxgrows.com/Midwest. Okay, we have so many more vehicles of access, and we know so much more about them. Mrs. Mason gets coupons sent to her for the 7 things that we buy most at Kroger. So the point is, that's the kind of thing you're talking about. But we're still in ag behind this. We are not only not using this new information and these new modes of finding our consumers or entrenching ourselves more with the consumers. We're just bad at it. And I got to tell you that we seem to not understand. I mean, we seem to not understand how bad we are at the promotion.
Well, like I said, I think it's a complex thing, and the dollar has to be spread so much thinner because we're talking omni-channel now. So to the point that you were mentioning of, it used to be like a select few categories. It was out of home, it was print, it was radio, and so on. And now, in addition to those, there's also public relations, there's digital marketing, and so on and so forth, right? That to the point of we're bad at it. I think what we're bad at is, I struggle with even that word of we're bad at it, where we have some room for improvement. I'm a silver lining, find the positivity kind of gal. Where I think we have some opportunity to improve is having more of that alignment up and down the ladder, right? So that a big national campaign for an agricultural industry is syndicated well in all the way down into local markets. But again, because we have so much of a deeper understanding of the various segments that we're talking to, that it's Midwest mom, it's Gen Z in the city, there's discussions about what is Gen Alpha going to want to look for in their buying behaviors. And
is that what they're calling these little bastards now? Gen Alpha?
Yeah, Gen Alpha is the next one.
That's the one that would be like in high school right now?
So I think they're under 9 years old and under is Gen Alpha, I believe. But it's all influence, right? And so when we think about a Got Milk campaign, we can no longer, I guess that's not even the word. It's much more difficult to launch a campaign like that's going to resonate with our knowledge of these various audiences. And so I think that is where it becomes difficult, and why we look back with such nostalgia to something like Got Milk and like a truck or like a rock, with such admiration, because it was that one silver bullet.
Yeah, and now it's going to be more segmented, et cetera, et cetera. All right, I want to, sticking with a couple of things, and I'm talking about mindset. This is, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of them here. We can write them down. You're old-fashioned enough. I saw you using a pen and paper. So.
I do, yeah.
Most people, that are in their 30s and under don't do that. I still do too. I've got pen and paper at my desk at all time.
Yep.
I'll give you a bunch of reasons why I think we're bad. First off, we rely on checkoff programs, and in general, the people that get hired by checkoff programs are bureaucrats. They are the kind of people that want a government job. They are not the creative bulbs in the ceiling. They are people that want a secure, safe job. I saw this when I attempted to work with Georgia Milk, where my stuff had to be approved by some woman within the United States Department of Agriculture who was a nice enough woman, but she had never sold anything in her life. She couldn't sell Band-Aids at a train wreck, and she's now supposed to approve messaging that is supposed to move product. So you've got people in checkoff spots. This is the number one problem, I think. The checkoff hires people that want a government job, not people like you and me that know how to sell stuff. I've been selling
because they're looking for safe, right? It goes back to what we were saying at the top of the call. It goes back to the security that those organizations that are allocating the dollars are not looking for a guarantee, because anybody who's like, that's not something you can provide in the industry, right? A campaign is a calculated risk, a creatively calculated risk. But I think that those organizations are looking for the safe choice. And whereas the truly creative, out of the box, compelling, like silver bullet of a campaign is something that is more of a risk.
Yeah, well, obviously you run your own business. I run my own business. There's inherent risk, and I know that in ag we love to talk about how much risk we have, and my farmer buddies don't like to hear this. I'm like, oh, really? Are you really that much at risk? Let's see. You have a federally backed insurance policy that guarantees you revenue. And farmers don't like to admit this. So the truth is, even production agriculture isn't really that risky, given all of the subsidies and government backing. And people argue with me with this. I'm like, well, I have a brother who's a career USDA guy. I can go through every program that's had in the last 40 years. Trust me. Running your own business, like you and I do, you're at risk every moment. Every day you wake up unemployed. And so
every conversation I have is a risk.
There's a different mindset for people like you and me than there are from people that generally are the more of the staid, normal ag people. They think they're at risk, but the reality is they've been backed through a lot of programs for a long, long time. That same mentality carries over. Like you just said, the people that go to work for checkoff programs, it's like a government job. It's
Mm-hmm.
you're not grabbing someone that is out there on the walking the tightrope saying, "Hey man, I tell you what, one slip up and I'm a goner." That's a problem because again, I go back to having to get messaging approved by some government employee. You're never going to come up with something brilliant. That is one of the problems with marketing, from my opinion, is who they have in these checkoff roles are not risk takers. They're not entrepreneurial. They're not creative. They are government employees.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that with the new industries that are coming to the table, and I know we keep going back to dairy, but it's just so easy because there's been so much change.
They suck at it because they suck at it the worst. So easy.
But look at
because.
Go ahead.
Speaking of dairy, let's use this as an example. This is another problem. We judge from our own perspective and seem to be incapable. So this is my point number 2, why where we are challenged as an industry. And I'm using dairy as this example, but it could be all of ag. We struggle to understand that we are not the customer. I'm going to say that again. So I already said the checkoff, we got not creatives. We struggle. I'm writing this one down as point number 2. You can write this down too, Maureen. We struggle to understand customer perspective. 2-3 years ago, Oatly, the oat milk company, they took their entire annual marketing budget, from what I read, and they used it to buy 30 seconds during the Super Bowl. The founder or CEO, I can't remember what his role was exactly, he's CEO, I think, of the company called Oatly. Oat milk company. Oh, it's not real milk. Okay, whatever the hell you want to call it. The point is, it's Oatly. It is an alternative beverage to milk. They spent their entire budget to get the time, the 30 seconds. It probably cost them a few $1 million for 30 seconds. The commercial, you could have shot it with your phone. It was him standing in a field that may have not even been oats, if you look at it closely, playing a keyboard and saying, "Yeah, I drink Oatly." It was not musically brilliant. And the next day, social media, my feed is filled. "Oh, what do you think about that? Boy, that sure sucked. Boy, they sure don't understand." I said, this proves how bad you are at this, agriculture. Everyone was talking about this 30-second spot that was recorded on on a shoestring budget with the CEO of this company standing in a field playing a keyboard, singing out of key and poorly. They got arguably 1,000 times of a return on their investment. And we in ag judged it and said, "That commercial sure sucked. That won't sell oat milk." And I said, you are really not capable of comprehending, A, how marketing works, and B, the customer. The customer at home thought it was clever enough that they're now talking about it and might just grab a half gallon of oat milk when they're at the store. You remember that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think you're right about that it is hard to comprehend a customer that is not aligned with your own philosophies, right? And so I think that this happens in a lot of marketing, actually. So just to go on a little bit of a side note, I'm a big fan of just rural community development in general. I'm a big fan of economic development and, investing in rural communities, I think, is an important thing. I think that it is directly tied to agriculture and all of those lovely things. And so I had this idea to put a mural on a building in my little town in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. And this may be a bad idea for me to share my true opinion about this, but it was incredibly difficult to get that done. We're live painting it this Saturday. It's a community painting project. It's going to be great fun, and it's going to be the first one in town. It's going to, be wonderful and put the town on the map from a tourism perspective and all of those wonderful things. I had to get through a lot of old white men to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So I think that one of the challenges with a comparison like traditional dairy and innovative campaigns and products like Oatly, like plant-based milk, like any of the alternatives that are coming down the pike, and actually I could even argue that this is why ag tech has a hard time finding footing in agriculture as well, is because we're talking about risk aversion. We're talking about understanding perspectives and point of views that are not necessarily consistent with our own values. And so that can be really hard depending on how you were raised and, you know, where your safety comes from in terms of sticking with what's always worked. I think farmers are notorious for sticking with what's always worked. And you mentioned, you know, you were talking about being backed by the insurance plans for what they put in the ground and everything like that. And so that's one of the reasons why farmers are hesitant in some cases to switch to regenerative agriculture practices, because it's different from what they've always known.
Sure, right.
So it comes down to human behavior, really. If you think about that whole track of a fear of the unknown and people not wanting to, with respect to risk management, but, you know, do something that they don't feel safe venturing into that new territory. And so I think as competition continues to come into our retailers and dairy is challenged with new products and other agricultural, you know, products are challenged by the new and different thing that people are consuming and buying behaviors that are changing, it is going to be innovate or die.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, I give my second point. We struggle to understand customers and their perspective. And I share this with my audiences when I'm on stage speaking. Maureen, I say, okay, I live half the year, a little less than half the year, in the suburbs of Phoenix. And anybody that's in my neighborhood knows nothing about agriculture. Mm-hmm. And we think that they're wrong, or we think that they think like us. I mean, I can go through every... And no, that's not the case. Why would they ever buy that? You know, the farm person, the ag person. Why would anybody ever buy plant-based burger? I said, because they got told a better story. Because they believe that on the farms that you're mistreating the animals. They have been told that the environment is at risk. I don't agree with any of these things, but I understand marketing. And we struggle to understand that customer's perspective. That customer didn't... My first job was feeding the bottle calves. I'm sure yours was too. Mm-hmm. You know, I get all this. Mm-hmm. That customer doesn't. And so we don't even comprehend their perspective. And then we say things like, we want messaging that suits us. And that's a real problem. Mm-hmm. Understand?
Yeah, I think that's also exactly why it's a complex thing, right? I think that, you know, we keep talking about this idea of a silver bullet, and campaigns like the ones that we've been referencing are so specialized. It's just a different world. Marketing is just different. And a lot of it comes back to exactly what you were just talking about. It's about the story. Who can tell a better story that's going to resonate with the audience that you want to compel?
All right. And now you bring me to point number 3. Point number 3 is why we suck at ag marketing. We promote very well to ourselves. Holy good God almighty. I have pointed out that if agriculture was an individual, it'd be that insane guy on the park bench muttering to himself. We talk to ourselves so damn much, and we love it. We go to the Farm Progress Show and tell corn growers in Illinois how awesome corn is. I think they're already pretty well vested, folks. I don't think we need to go, but here's why we do it. Because like you talked about, the checkoff programs have learned if they don't go to the Farm Progress Show and spend farmer money telling farmers how good farming corn is, they get yelled at. And since they're government employees, the one thing they know is a cakewalk of a job working for this checkoff program. I mean, I don't really have to actually, I'm not held accountable for actually sales volume. So I'll just keep those farmers happy. I'll take their money and run a campaign back to the farmers that paid my campaign to tell them how awesome corn farming is. And I'm not in any way being mean. If you think this is made up, go to the damn Farm Progress Show and you will see they have a big booth there promoting corn to corn farmers. And so we promote like hell to ourselves.
So I think that one of the reasons why that happens is because the farmers want to see it.
They want to know where their money is going.
They want to see it.
Because they do not pick up Vogue magazine. They do not watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And so they only see programming that is to them. And then if they think, well, why are we spending this money on advertising? I don't see no ads.
Exactly. Okay. Right.
So the checkoff program learns, oh, well, we better keep these people happy. We're going to go ahead and take their ad money and advertise right back to them. And it doesn't do a bit of good.
So what I would say is, I think continuing to improve, that at least I'm hearing a lot from any organization I'm interfacing with that is looking to spend checkoff dollars for an ROI, right? For a direct lift. I think that there are, and it depends on how the organization is run, right? But I think that some of them are focused on how can we spend this dollar to make $5? How can we find an ROI in a campaign that we're doing that is going to actually move the needle on production? That's one approach that is more of the short game. How can I get the ROI from this investment? And then there are other campaigns, like we work with New York Wine and Grape Foundation, and we've been engaged to do a 2-year survey for all of the grape growers in the state of New York to understand better what's in the ground and why, how much is grown and all that stuff. That's a long game. They want that data so that as the industry for the state, they can pull more levers in what could be produced with the output of this product. That is more of the big picture stuff. But again, that's still not a sexy campaign that's related to, wine and grapes. But it is important industry work that is moving the needle for the long term. And so there are industries, and I think that specialty crops are better than commodity crops in this vein. I'm
so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because that is true. And I want to revisit that. I want to revisit that very thing, specialty crop marketing versus commodity. And whether it's the checkoffs or the individual, whatever it is, they are much better at it. Okay, speaking of marketing, I've got to do an ad here for Truterra. Truterra is focused on supporting farmers at every stage of your sustainability journey to help plan, make, and maintain a regenerative management practice. Let's face it, commodity prices are in the crapper. It's not going to be a good year. What if you could do something to diversify your revenue? What if you could get paid for your acres to be enrolled in the sustainability program? They don't even have to be acres you own. It could be all the acres you farm, but you should consider a sustainability program. Oh, that won't work here. You know what? You really should look into it, because what if you could get 30 or 40 bucks per acre? That might be your margin. That might be your entire profit in years like this when we're talking sub $4 corn. I'm just using that as an example. You should really look into this. Truterra can help you getting you into a sustainability program. Find the right program for you, for your fields. Go to TruterraAg.com, Truterra, Truterra, ag.com, part of the Land O'Lakes company, been around for more than 100 years. Truterra's been around for a few years. Check it out. Your economic viability might depend on it. Specialty crops, and think more like brands. Versus commodity crops, think more like commodities. And what do commodities do? Just make lots of them as cheap as possible. And that is, unfortunately, the mindset that then permeates into the promotion, Maureen.
I totally agree. With you. One of the things that I think it's very interesting, there are some organizations that are trying to add value in new and different ways that allow, I'll be specific. There is a company that I spoke to recently called the DeLong Company, and they received some USDA funding, climate smart agriculture monies. So they got, I think it was $40 million over 5 years to pay farmers to plant regeneratively, and then help brands source regeneratively grown crops. Brilliant, right? But things like that, I was very, very excited when that came on my radar. And when I talked to the guy from DeLong Company about what they were doing, I said, this is absolutely incredible. The average consumer does not understand at all the complexity that goes into making something like that happen. They don't get it. And so to your point of specialty versus commodity, is like specialty is like brand and commodity is like volume and the value play, right? That we also have to, when we're talking about omni-channel and educating these various audiences that we have more of an understanding of these days, that we also have to educate that consumer about the new and different things that are coming down the pike. And so it's hard for the National Agriculture Organization to tell a story of the new and different thing that's coming down the pike, because you've got different levels of understanding for those audiences.
Okay, Maureen, you just used the term that I have First off, the DeLong Company has been on this podcast.
Oh, wonderful.
I can't remember the kid's name, but
was it Dylan Vaca?
Dylan has been on this podcast, and we talked about that, and I made the point: does the consumer care? Well, they got grant money, so they're going to make it work until the grant money dries up. But will it be viable after that? So that's a different story for a different day. But yeah, because they just start thinking like specialty versus commodity.
Right.
You just said we've got to educate the consumer. And I have pointed out, I hear this all the time. I hear it at every ag meeting I go. Somebody gets up and they have someone get up, probably from a checkoff program, at every ag meeting I speak at. And maybe this is my warm-up act. And the person's up there and they say, we just have to educate our consumers. And I'm like, well, first off, what if someone comes to you and say, hey, Maureen, I'm going to educate you about this printer that's sitting behind you. And you're like, yeah. I know how to work a printer. No, you're stupid. I need to educate you on this printer. After you get told 9 times you need educated on that printer that's sitting over your left shoulder, you're going to say, screw you. I don't even need your damn printer. So educating the consumer kind of sounds a little bit insulting. And number one. Number two, it assumes that they are dumb. Thirdly, it assumes that they care to be educated. You know what? Mm-hmm. I have made this example, and I'm not picking on you, but you said educate the consumer. And I said, because does great marketing educate or does it excite? I've done this when I've been at those ag meetings, and I'll just do this right now. I'm holding this cell phone in my hand right now. I said, everybody's got one in their hand, right? Right now. Go ahead, hold up your smartphone. And I'll walk up to the person at the front table and I'll say, all right, Maureen, you used that smartphone probably 40 times today, didn't you? Yep. You get your email on it. You get your texts on it. You make phone calls on it if you're old-fashioned. You look up stuff. You do all your social media on there. You can navigate and get from here to your next appointment. You can put a timer on there so you know you're not late. Do you know how that cell phone works? Admit it. No, you don't. Do you know where it was made? Do you know where it was made? Probably not. Do you know who made it? Do you know the technology that makes it go? No. Do you care? No. What you care about is that when you pick that phone up, it does all those 50 things I just said that it does. In the morning, when I come to my office, I unplug it because I leave it in my office overnight and I start working on it. As long as it does that, that's all I care about. That's our consumer in agriculture. We then, after we talk about educating the consumer, we think we're going to tell them how corn is grown or how we raise calves. I don't think the consumer cares. Then the next thing I'll go to is, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think
I'm saying that because we do that a lot. We want to tell them, hey, here's why we go ahead and pump anhydrous ammonia into our fields.
And I don't think it's that. I think that it's when I think about what compels a consumer and what is the way that they can be educated that doesn't feel the way that you're referring, right? Of
Are we on the verge of a disagreement? Are we on the verge of a disagreement?
Well, I don't know. We might be. I think that in today's day and age, it is edutainment. It is education in an entertaining way, right? It is also has to be, I keep using the word compelling for a reason. It has to have the story behind it that resonates with them. So it's not, here is how we farm corn and we use this tractor for this reason. And, we applied this biopesticide or we didn't, whatever. What the consumer cares about is the why behind that story and the, compelling segment of it. So I like to support local because I believe in supporting the farms that are in my own backyard because I think it strengthens communities and I'm a big fan of rural, right? It's the classic Simon Sinek start with why. Why should that consumer care? And I think that is the thing that makes a difference, but it doesn't solve the heart of what we're talking about here, which is, are there campaigns today for agriculture that are exciting and are exciting, period? And can we compare them to campaigns from back in the day like Got Milk?
Okay.
I don't think campaigns like that, like Got Milk, are going to exist again because of the knowledge that we now have.
And also because of the segmentation. And that's part of it. And also because apparently the industry is not going to come up with something that's that catchy. You and I, we had a little brief disagreement there, but that's okay. And that means we're both thinking. but we agree on another thing, that it's not education that moves the needle. It is excitement. Remember, humans make decisions emotionally and then oftentimes back it up, not always, oftentimes back up their emotionally made decision with facts.
Right.
We are out here in agriculture not creating emotions. We're beating them over the head with facts. And that's where that whole educate the consumer thing just sticks in my craw, because I'm like, you don't understand that they don't want to be educated. They don't care. They want to be excited. Let's go another one. Speaking of this thing about facts, we think it's all about facts and we fight the wrong battles because of it. Burger King, I just talked about this in another episode. Burger King a few years ago, it was a bad commercial. I had to watch it 3 times to understand what everybody was bitching about. They show a little kid in a cowboy costume singing a song about cow farts. And the gist of the commercial was to tell consumers that it's okay to eat Whoppers because Burger King was taking care of the environment by how they sourced their beef. So what did all the ag people do? Threw up their arms and screamed, "Screw Burger King." And then the farm babe got excited that she got through to the Burger King chief marketing officer and pulled the ad. Yay! And I'm like, you fucking idiots. You idiots. Burger King told their customers, eat all the Whoppers you want, and it's still okay for the environment. That is a win. That is a win for Whopper sales. Is a win for beef sales. And you idiots decided to fight a company that was actually, you think Burger King wants to sell less beef? They want to sell your product. And you fought with them and cheered that you got this ad pulled that was actually telling the customer, eat more Whoppers. It's good for the environment. And you morons in agriculture fought with Burger King, who is trying to sell more of your product.
Yeah. Very interesting story. I wasn't aware of that one. I just jotted it down. I will definitely do some more research on that front. I, again, continue to go back to the consumer of the Got Milk Day was effectively grouped into one that a campaign like that, right, that is, let's promote the Whopper, would have been executed in some way and resonated and all across the board. And today there is some silver bullet out there that can kind of think about this in new and different, but because of these various segments of the industry, you've got folks that are going to be offended by the Burger King scenario that you just mentioned, and others that see the value in it and the industry impact. Now, the other thing that the awareness that you and I have that's different from the average consumer too, is that we understand the layers.
Yep.
Right. And so there are so many layers to this, and you keep going back to mentioning about the checkoff organizations, and they have a certain risk tolerance as people who are allocating government dollars and that sort of thing. And that it's about risk management. They also understand the layers. Whereas today's consumer, to the point of their education, there is only going to be so much that they care to understand. Mm-hmm. And they are told different stories from their doctor, from their crazy neighbor, Sue, right? That over the fence is saying, you shouldn't buy dairy anymore. Right.
Or the influencer on Facebook that tells people that if you eat, you eat eggs, it's going to do something or what have you. Yeah. Right.
And something like that, right, on social is such a whole interesting segment in and of itself too, because content can go viral that is wrong, right?
Yep.
That is just blatantly wrong. That also goes viral for various reasons, right? It might be like highly entertaining, but also highly unfactual. And so that's a whole other thing that the industry has to contend with, is what is the sustainability story that's told as it relates to ag for any agricultural sector?
I'm gonna go with another one. I'm afraid that I've got we struggle with promotion because once something we think sounds clever, then we run with it. Like I talked about, whether it's Got Milk or whatever. I have been critical, and I love the pork producers. The National Pork Producers Council has been a client of mine. I've worked for the pork people again and again. Love those people. I like pork chops, but you know what I don't like? I don't like the campaign that they used for 20 years. Pork, the other white meat. Hey, we're just like chicken, but we're 3 times the price. So if that's your pitch. Hey, it's a lot like chicken, but it's more expensive. I didn't ever approve of that, but we stuck with it for a long time. So we tend to stick with initiatives that don't work for us. on the beef side, we've gone from about 86 pounds, I think was the last time. The high was around 86 pounds to about 56 pounds. We've lost 45% of beef consumption in the last 45, 50 years. And it seems like they just they somehow nobody within beef has ever said, maybe what we're doing doesn't work. If I lost 40 to 50% of my business over the last several decades, I might do a whole hell of a lot of changes. Your thoughts? So
I'm not super educated on the beef industry to be able to speak to that. But again, I'm going to go back again to dairy, and I hate to beat a dead horse because I know we've been talking about it a lot on this.
Well, let's talk about beef. I just gave you the numbers. We went from about 85 pounds in the 1970s to 56 pounds.
I know, but let me make a point as it relates to dairy. The fluid milk dairy consumption numbers have been declining
since World War II.
Long time.
Yep.
Value-added consumption is up.
Yep.
So is there something like that in beef too that is up to counteract that? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know the intricacies of the beef industry.
Yeah, well, I'm just going with pounds. I'm just going with pounds per consumed per American. And so, yeah, did it help that we maybe put them into a more value added? That's a tough part. You don't take beef and necessarily turn it into yogurt the way you do with a milk, get milk.
But so, also, is that consumer choosing a different agricultural protein?
Yeah. Generally, the protein is switched from beef to chicken. In general, chicken is about 4 times consumed as it was when I was born in 1969.
So there you go.
It's about 4 times as much chicken consumed as 3.5 times what it was in the beef.
But I think that one of the other things too that always strikes me anytime a segment of the agricultural industry is trying to hold tightly to a trend that they have had, like beef, right? That you're saying, the beef has been down, and so they switched to chicken, and chicken is rising. And so in my mind, it's okay, great. They're still consuming an agricultural protein, but then my mind goes to, because my language to myself was at least they're not eating grass instead, right?
Yeah, right,
but
right.
What if they were? But what if they were? Like we can only do so much to influence a consumer's choice. Yep. And that's why I go back to the amount of business that goes into today's grocery store to influence purchasing decisions, that there are ways to compel consumers to align with values, which I truly believe is what it all comes down to, value alignment, for what choices they're making in the grocery store. And there are ways to make sure that you're telling a story that aligns with that.
Maureen, we're going to go to my last one. I know I've kept you on here long. You're actually skipping another meeting, which is important. So I want everybody listening to this. If you're listening to this is, I really am enjoying this discussion because Maureen gets it. She's the CEO of a company called Agency 29, and she works with a lot of different agricultural entities. And we're talking about obviously why ag sucks at marketing and branding and promoting. I'm going to go with my last reason. We, as agricultural people, many of us are off the farm. We think like farmers, which means we think it's all about price. And I get told this from I've worked in every corner of this industry. I've worked with from cranberries to corn producers to beef to chicken. I mean, go around everything on the dinner table. Dried beans. I've spoken to, worked with, consulted, whatever, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
We think it's all about price, no matter what the thing is. Cheap food, cheap food, cheap food. And I always have to tell people, I just looked it up. There were 517 Whole Foods outlets in the United States a year ago. I think there's a few less than that now. Why would there be 500 Whole Foods outlets if all consumers only care? There's not one SKU. There's not one SKU, not one product in Whole Foods that is cheaper than it would be at Walmart or Kroger or wherever else. Winn-Dixie. So we've got this idea that marketing doesn't matter. It's all about how cheap we can make something, and it's just not true.
I do not subscribe to a race to the bottom. That's what that is, right? However, today's farmer is as the bottom of the food chain, right? They're the ones that are growing the product at its root source. Yeah. And so they tend to get squeezed. for the benefit of what the consumer will tolerate at the end, at the purchase point.
Yeah, at the purchase point, right.
So it becomes even more so about that story and about what is your differentiation. And it also goes back to what we were just talking about with specialty versus commodity, that when you're growing a commodity product, I think there's only so much that you can do in that differentiation point. And so it's, okay, what are you doing to diversify on your farm to make a healthy farm operation? Perhaps is, so all that to say, your question was, is it all about price? I think that price is a major driver for agriculture and today's farmer. I also believe that it doesn't have to be a race to the bottom, and that farms need to diversify just like any other CPG brand, just like Oatly needs to diversify the way that they're marketing their product and where they're sourcing from and all that stuff. But today's farmer needs to diversify as well. Well,
and I'm not passionate on farmers. You are in general a price taker, and I get all that. But in general, we still believe from the farm all the way to the consumer that somehow it's only about price, and it's just not true. Again, there wouldn't be a thing called Whole Foods. You know what? You talked about fluid milk. You and I both dairy farm kids. My old man's rolling his grave right now. More gallons of bottled water sell every day in the United States than gallons of milk for more price. It's more expensive to buy a 16-ounce bottle of Aquafina or Dasani.
Wow, that's wild.
The branded, than it is to buy 16 ounces of a bottle of milk. The point is, the consumer isn't this price. If the consumer is price oriented, how the hell do we have $8 billion worth of bottled water sales? Water's free. Every municipality in the United States of America has clean, safe drinking water. Even in Flint, they've got that problem fixed up there. So we've got a consumer that is looking for ways to spend more money, and we got an agricultural mindset that somehow it's all about how cheap, and it's not that case for a bunch of our consumers. How the hell would you have cage-free eggs selling for $9 a dozen or $7 a dozen? It's not about.
And they're able to do that because they can differentiate themselves.
Yep.
Right. That's the point. And so it becomes, if you want to be able to be competitive with your fluid milk product on shelf in the grocery store, then you need to do it differently. If you want to charge more, you need the differentiation.
The perception of differentiation. All right, I gave you my 5 things about why ag sucks at promoting and marketing, and then you just talked about how we can fix it. You said differentiation. I told you about we fight the wrong battles. You didn't give me a fix on that. I gave you the Burger King example. What do we do? I think we just stop fighting. I think instead of fighting it, we need to understand. We fought about Oatly. We fight about Burger King. Instead of fighting it, maybe we should go and hire their ad agency.
I think there's room for innovation in the industry. Yes.
I said we promote to ourselves. You agreed.
I think that we do promote to ourselves and would benefit from taking more risks in innovative campaigns that are connecting on story. However, I don't blanket agree with you. I think that there are organizations that are administering checkoff dollars in certain regions that are doing something different.
And it tends to be not the big ones. It tends to be more public. Avocados is obviously the success story. And as much as you like to give credit to promotion, there's another reason. Nobody ever ate guacamole in 1980. Guacamole's everywhere now. Also, we've got a big Hispanic influence in the United States we didn't have 40 years ago. So that's also why it's not just marketing that made avocados go from 1 pound per year per American to 16, I think is the last time I looked.
Right. Yeah. And again, we've been talking about this entire chat about changing consumer behaviors and preferences. And so a big agricultural industry in the state of New York, Chobani is here. Yeah. So we've got Greek yogurt, right, that started here. Yep. Well, started here. Its roots in the U.S. are here. Obviously, Greek yogurt did not start here. But that was something that prior to Chobani was not a segment, and now it is. And even going back to water, right? Like we're talking about the whole CPG landscape. Even looking at water, you've got brands like Liquid Death that are coming in and truly disrupting the market. And so I think that there is room for that. But what we're also talking about is the risk tolerance of the industry and the folks that are administering the checkoff dollars and how they're being spent and the risk tolerance that they have for campaigns.
I said that we I said, well, we just talked about checkoff. I said that we hire bureaucrats, not creative types, to administer these funds, which is unfortunate. And then the other one, which was my second point, I said that we, as an industry, don't understand our customers, and I think that you and I both agreed on that.
Yeah,
we truly don't think like the customer that lives in the suburbs of Chicago, and we've it's my perception, we think we understand them. You and I have a better understanding of them than many that work in our industry.
right. And I was just going to say something similar to that. I was going to say that it depends on who in the industry you're talking to, right? That marketers and people who understand the layers of the industry get it, that the way that you talk to Gen Z is not the same that you talk to a boomer. And that, those behaviors are just different, which means that the language has to be different.
And you're a millennial.
I am a millennial.
And I'm getting to where I'm getting more warm about it. I used to think I was really anti-millennial, but you're warming me up to that. All right, get me out of here. Closing thought. I said we suck at it. You're not as mean. You said, well, we have challenges. Get me out of here. Promoting ag, marketing, branding. It's important. And I think in a marketplace that is completely oversupplied, which we are, where we have plethora of choices and we have more stuff than we need. It's not the old days where you just say, hey, I grew a steer for you. You should be happy. Well, we don't have a starving customer base anymore. We have a customer base with loads of oodles of opportunities and choices. What's your closing thought on that?
My closing thought is that I don't think that we should try and chase campaigns like Got Milk and things like that, because it's just not something that can be turned on today and be impactful tomorrow. We look back at those campaigns and understand the impact that they had because we have the ability to look back and see their impact. Whereas in the moment, I don't know if it was something that the industry would have looked at and said, wow, this is making a big difference.
So your answer, Maureen, is that we've got a more segmented, and we can work there. I mean, again, just like the smartphone in your hand, we know that a broad market campaign is probably not going to have the effect that it did a few decades ago. But that's okay. We can play in the new sandbox. The new sandbox it's a different message to the Gen Alpha than it is to the Gen X like me.
Absolutely.
Et cetera.
Yep. And diversified by channel as well, right? When we're thinking about an omni-channel strategy, the in-store campaigns, of what is the coupon strategy, promotion strategy to move product in store is different from a digital campaign and an influencer campaign for the industry. Those are all very nuanced in terms of who they're reaching and how in those various channels. And so I am always a find the silver lining and hopeful kind of mindset person. And I think absolutely that there is continued opportunity in all of these segments of agriculture. And I think that we just have to your point of, we're not speaking to ourselves. We have to remember the nuance of these various audiences.
She's awesome. Her name is Maureen Ballatori. She's the CEO and founder of Agency 29, an upstate New York advertising, marketing, branding, promotion firm that works with almost all ag. I mean, they have other clients, but they are very heavily tilted in ag. If you want to learn more, go to agency29.com. Remember my sponsors. They help bring this show here. And by the way, I know this is a long one. This is one of the most important topics that I think that we don't talk enough about in agriculture, and that's why I had her on here today. She grudgingly is going to allow me to call it Promoting Ag, Why We Suck at It, and How to Fix It, because she's the silver lining kind of gal, as she already told you. Remember Land O'Lakes and Redox. Go and check out, Land O'Lakes, Truterra. Go check out TruterraAg.com. Check out Redox Grows. And also remember Pattern Ag. They've been with me for a long time. We really appreciate that. This is an important topic. Maureen, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
To all my agricultural people, you can produce all you want, but until you sell something, you don't have a business, right? There's no such thing as a business until you actually sell something. And promotion, marketing, advertising, whether you like it or not, and most people in agriculture aren't really, it's not their specialty area. You've got to You got to promote and you got to sell or you don't have a business. And that's why we devoted this whole very long episode to that, almost an hour. But thanks for being here. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You know, everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can preemptively, proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.